Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Eddie Proudfoot podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about how to create the story that your players want. So let's get started. So there are a few tips on how to actually do this in your campaigns, but the first and foremost thing to remember is when you're designing your campaign, if you write out a lot of plot and story at the beginning, this is very risky because your players may or may not be super interested in that plot. Now, I'll talk at the end of some strategies if that is the campaign design you want to go for on how to get your players interested in your plot from the get-go. But first, I want to talk about how to craft a much looser story and then find out what your players find interesting. So the first thing you want to do in your session one is create an opening scene with lots of potential plots that they could grab onto, but not having a main plot in mind. And this might sound really counterintuitive, but the best example you can associate with this is side quests. So if you think back to a really fun RPG video game you've played, there's always lots of side quests. Well, imagine if every side quest could have been the main quest line. It might be a little bit contrived to think of it that way, but imagine if helping the old lady find the thief for the bakery was the main plot line. What if it revealed this huge underground crime ring that your party then gets to break up or maybe even join and become a part of, depending on the party's moral persuasion? That can be the main plot. And if that's the side quest they grab onto out of 10 other possibilities, that shows you have now made a story they're interested in. And all you had to do was come up with the initial little bit of, hey, this old lady and her bakery keeps getting robbed from. Do you guys want to figure out what's going on with that? Or do you want to go investigate what's going on the docks here? Apparently, there is a problem with the laborers just disappearing overnight, and then maybe they explore into the woods and find out why the laborers are disappearing. Maybe there is some sort of satanic cult in the woods that keeps sacrificing fishermen because they're trying to summon a fish god or something. I don't know if that's something that would happen, but it was an example that just came to mind right now. But those are examples of side quests that could turn into a major plot because they do have more to them. And it's up to you whether a side quest has more legs, i.e. more story behind it, than just a simple, quick and dirty, yep, you did the thing, now let's move on to the next thing. But the reason having those small, low effort plot hooks is nice is because it gives your party the option of agency, thinking that their choices will affect how the campaign plays out. And I find that that is one of the best ways to get players interested in the story of your campaign is to have them drive it. And it also means that it's less work for you as a DM to spend hours, sometimes days, crafting out a large overarching campaign. Now, I'm not saying that it's bad when DMs do that and it's not good D&D, because it is. It can be great D&D. I have one of my best friends who is a great DM. He runs his campaigns that way. We're very different styles of DMs, but we both have success at our tables. And it's because there's no right way to do this thing called DMing. You can do it a lot of different ways. The only rule is that people are having fun at your table. The second way you can make a story interesting for players is if a player has written a semi-detailed backstory. And I say semi-detailed because if you're a player listening to this, hi, first off. And second, if you give your DM a novelette of a backstory, they're not going to read it. I say this as someone who has received lengthy backstories and just ignored them because I don't want to favor a player over another. And I think what happens when people write lengthy backstories and the DMs that read and fall in love with them, they tend to make that person the main character, which can put off your other players and make them feel devalued in the campaign. So what I do to avoid this is I encourage everyone to write just a simple short paragraph of a backstory, and then I treat them all equal. And it makes your players who would write a longer backstory write a more condensed one, because then every player at the table has some kind of backstory that you can tie in to the campaign. Tying in a player's backstory through an NPC or an event or some location on the map makes them feel more involved. It grips them in a way that just having regular NPCs and regular towns that have no meaning to the players doesn't. So for that reason, backstories are a great way to grip people into any sort of storyline that you're trying to tell, and making sure that players equally contribute a unique backstory is important for the reason of not having a main character player. That is one of the main ways, aside from railroading, I see people get turned off of a campaign is when their story doesn't matter compared to another player at the table. And more often than not, it is the slightly more experienced player that'll do that over the new player or slightly less experienced player. The last thing I want to say is if you are insistent on writing a large campaign and you really want your players to be interested in it, make sure you explain that to them. This is where a session 0 can really come in handy for the GM. It has a lot of other uses, and I'm not going to go over them here because that's also a video in and of itself. But for the purpose of telegraphing to your players, hey, I wrote this really lengthy campaign. It's going to be about blank, i.e. maybe you're going to be uncovering this lich's tomb, and there's been a curse on the land that has plagued all of the cities around it with disease, famine, drought, etc. And their goal is going to be to vanquish this lich. That gives away some of the campaign, and you might think it ruins some of the suspense. But let me tell you, one option is that you've killed some suspense, but your players play the campaign. The other option is you don't kill the suspense, you keep it all secretive and mystified to your players, and then they ignore your plot points and do something else, and then you're frustrated because they didn't do the thing that you spent days, months, weeks, whatever planning. So for that reason, giving a strong elevator pitch and maybe even walking them up to the point of the call to action and starting your campaign there rather than having a slow build to the call to action is very vital if you want to run a linear campaign. Again, there's nothing wrong with a linear campaign. The thing that makes it have such a bad connotation is because people will run a linear campaign without telling their players that that's what they're doing, or their players don't quite understand that that's what's going on, and then they feel railroaded, which is why the term is synonymous with a linear campaign. Linear campaigns are great. They can be so much fun. They can have a lot of depth and fun role-playing experience in them if everyone's on the same page, which is why I'm an advocate for sandboxing, because it doesn't require as much upfront explanation of what's going to be happening, and it provides a lot of dynamic flow to your campaign that wouldn't otherwise happen if you'd pre-written out everything. So that's all I really had to say today. Please let me know in the comments your thoughts about linear versus sandbox campaigns, what you think about this whole idea of creating a story from your players' backstory and actions. If you disagree with me, I'd love to hear any thoughts about that. Like the video if you're enjoying the Eddie Proudfoot podcast, and as always, may the gods have mercy on your soul.